Coach Buzz Williams already could be making some noise in the portal.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at Inside Black and Gold, so make sure you guys head over to insideblackandgold.net for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Maryland's new coach, Buzz Williams, looks like he already is going to be making some moves in the portal, which I think is huge. We don't have too much time to talk about Buzz overall. I got one episode with him and talked about him introducing him to the program, and now we're kind of into it. This stuff happens fast. The coaching changes, the player changes, the transfer portals. Today, college sports, everything seems to just happen fast. And that's exactly what's happening here with Coach Williams. Is we had a situation where Kevin Willard kind of last second made a really weird move and behind the scenes move, and nobody really saw it, and it was a really fast move, and decided to go to Villanova while Maryland was still playing. And we quickly rebounded and got Coach Buzz Williams, who has put himself a really good resume together. And I love having an experienced coach. I love Coach Williams. I think he's going to do good at the University of Maryland. I don't think he's gotten quite his hands on the exact program that he's wanted to be at. But I think my point is this stuff happens really quickly, and we're seeing how it looks like Buzz is already putting in some work in the portal. And I think a lot of us thought that this could happen. It sounds like a couple former Texas A&M players could be transferring to Maryland, and that's a good sign. That's obviously a good sign. If players want to follow a coach, that makes me feel good about the coach. That makes me feel good about what the coach has built, what the coach is doing. It makes me feel like the coach was well liked. You're not going to follow a coach just because. You're not going to follow a coach just because he says, oh, you guys, I'm going to take the Maryland job. You should come follow me. If you don't like the coach, you're not going to follow him. I can promise you that. And I think we're starting to see what Coach Williams is going to do and how he's going to get some guys in the portal. And there's already been a couple of guys predicted to Maryland that a lot of people think are going to join the Terps, which I think is absolutely huge. But I want to first emphasize, I do think this is a pretty good hiring for the Terps. I've heard different opinions. I haven't heard anyone say it's a bad hiring. Like, there hasn't been very many comments or very many fans or much of the media that is like, this is a bad hiring. Some people wanted somebody a little bit with a higher ceiling. Some people think Coach Williams has a lower ceiling, which I think is interesting. He has a lower ceiling, but he has a higher floor. And basically what they mean by that is he's going to give us, he might get us to the tournament every single year, but he doesn't have the ceiling to potentially win it. Where another coach, his floor might not be making the tournament. His floor might be kind of missing, kind of failing at this job, but his ceiling might be winning a national championship. And a lot of people think Coach Williams' floor is higher, but his ceiling isn't that high. And I kind of disagree with that. And I think he just hasn't gotten his self in the right position to be able to make a move that he wants to make. And remember, this guy is more successful so far than Kevin Willard. And a lot of people think it's an upgrade, and me included. I do think this is an upgrade when you look at the resumes. We'll see how well he recruits, but it looks like in the portal, he is starting to kind of get things going a little bit. We haven't gotten official news about anybody. We haven't had official news that anybody will be joining Maryland, but it does sound like former Texas A&M big Pharrell Payne looks like he is in the portal, and a lot of people are thinking it's going to be Maryland, which I tend to agree with. It sounds like it's going to be Maryland. It sounds like one of these situations where the player is going to follow their head coach to Texas or to Maryland from Texas A&M. It happens all the time. And I do really think this is a good direction for Maryland because Payne's really talented. And as long as everything goes right, I'm really excited about this Pharrell Payne kid. I think he's a really talented player. I think he has the skill. I think he has the talent to be really good next year for Maryland basketball. And he's really exactly what we need. And it does sound like he's going to end up going to Maryland. I don't want to say 100%, but I do think Buzz is doing a really good job. And he had no contact tag when he entered the portal, but he really started to turn it on at the end of the year last year when they're or this year, I guess you would say, still this year. In their loss against Michigan in the second round, he had 26 points, which is a pretty big time performance of 1 block, 5 rebounds against Yale, which was a big matchup. A lot of people thought Yale was going to upset Texas A&M in the first round. He had 25 points. Like, he's had big performances throughout the year. He could be a starting caliber center for Maryland and be a really good at it as well, not just a starting caliber, really solid center too. He averaged 10.4 points per game this year, 5.1 rebounds. He's 6'9", 250, so he can really play that 4 spot, and I think he can do that at a pretty high level. So that's definitely someone that I'm looking at that could definitely help the Terps next year. And I'm thinking Coach Buzz Williams seems pretty in on him and seems like that's going to be somebody that's going to be added to our core and to be added to our future. And I think I'm really excited about potentially adding Pharrell Payne as one of the first players in the Coach Buzz Williams era to be added. And it sounds like that's going to be a new addition that does end up happening and that does end up pulling through. And there's also a couple other Texas A&M guys that are entering the portal that some people think could end up actually also joining Maryland. There's Texas A&M guard Andre Mills also sounds like he potentially could be joining the Terps, is somebody that potentially looks like he entered the transfer portal. A lot of people are thinking Mills could join the Terps. He actually redshirted in the 2024 year. So this past year he redshirted, but he was a top 100 prospect. So it does sound interesting if we end up bringing him in. He could be a huge impact next year for us, him being a 4-star recruit. He was the 18th ranked shooting guard in his class, number 92 ranked nationally. So a top 100 guy in college basketball is really a big deal, and he could definitely help us, even though he redshirted last year. So we would still get 4 more years of him, which is definitely big. We need guys that are young. We need guys that can play. And if you pair those 2 guys to start with a former 4-star recruit that redshirted last year, he redshirted, I think, because Texas A&M had really good guard play. They have one of the best guards in the country in the Wade Taylor kid. That kid was electric. That kid knew what he was doing. And that's what kind of excites me about Coach Buzz Williams. I think part of the reason Wade Taylor was really good is because Coach Williams helped put him in the right spots to be one of the better players in the SEC. And I think we're going to see that with our guard play. And I think that we're going to see that potentially with Andre Mills. I think he could be that way for Maryland as well if he ends up coming too. And there was another guy too, Solomon Washington, that entered the portal. He could be interesting, and he could be a guy that Maryland has their eyes out on. Apparently, he's a lockdown defender. He averaged 4.7 points per game. He could be another guy that potentially could look like he could be a Maryland player. So there's 3 guys right there that all come from Texas A&M. And let's be honest, Texas A&M was good last year. It's not like they're coming from Bucknell or Lehigh or something like that to come play basketball at the University of Maryland. Like, these guys were playing at Texas A&M. They were 4 seed last year. Or I keep saying last year. I guess you would still think of that as this year in the tournament. So they're still big-time players. They still have the potential to really help our program overall, and I do think bringing them in definitely could help. And I think that also makes it more attractful for guys like Rodney Rice to potentially stay, some guys that we're going to talk about later. So this does look like something that could really materialize, and we could end up cooking in the portal pretty early here and end up bringing in some pretty big-time players. And I'm excited to see what guys we get and what the Coach Williams era looks like. But it does sound like I would expect news in the next couple of days, maybe over the weekend, maybe by the time I record back on Monday, maybe as soon as tomorrow's episode. You just don't know today. When the Coach Williams news broke, I had another episode ready to go, and I was like, shoot, what do I do now? I'm going to talk about this outdated info with Kevin Willard, and Coach Williams just signed with us. So you just don't know in today's college basketball with the portal. Things happen quickly. Things happen all the time. So I do think it could be really exciting time for Maryland Terrapins, and we'll see exactly how it goes and what ends up happening for the Terps. But I do think they are in a pretty good spot right now, and I think Coach Williams is going to start bringing a lot of different guys, and we're going to see how it shapes up. We're going to see if we have a roster we like going into next year. We're going to see if we have a tournament-worthy roster. We're going to see exactly what happens, but I do think the Terps have a chance of rebuilding this thing back to kind of how we were last year. Let's go ahead and talk about Coach Buzz Williams' expectations overall. What do I expect for him as the Maryland coach? What is good? What's bad? What's not good enough? We'll talk about that next. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. If you're feeling the hour loss of sleep, 5-hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late, watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up warm with your busy day, 5-hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. I've been staying up late watching all the game action, and 5-hour Energy helps me keep up the next day. Extra daylight, extra activities with longer days. I love getting outside for a hike or a run. Tropical Burst is my go-to for a quick boost. Whether I'm at the game or traveling, 5-hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me feeling refreshed. Head over to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up to date and stay energized. So I want to talk about Coach Buzz Williams. What do I think are my expectations? What do I think he needs to accomplish as Maryland coach? What's good? What's bad? I think this is important to talk about because I think we all have expectations. I think we all want our coach to be at a certain spot. I think we all want the Maryland basketball program to be at a certain spot. And some things just aren't going to cut it. Some things just aren't good enough. And I think it's important to kind of outline where we want to be. When I was talking to Med of Inside Black and Gold yesterday on the podcast, make sure you guys should check that out. It was about Coach Buzz Williams and him coming in. We were talking about some of the things, and I said he's been to a bunch of tournaments, but I think Ahmed brought really good kind of perspective and was like, yes, I agree with that, but to offer you a little pushback, that's kind of the expectation for Maryland basketball is to go to the tournament. And so this is what I kind of am at with Coach Williams, and this is kind of what I think are my expectations. In terms of year one expectations, I don't have any. It's not to make the tournament. It's not to win the Big Ten. I don't have year one expectations. If we're a bottom four team in the Big Ten year one, it might make sense for us to be there. It might make sense because he might not have gotten the resources he needs. He hasn't gotten a chance to bring in a recruiting class. He hasn't gotten the chance to bring in the transfer portal class that he probably wants. He hasn't gotten the chance to put the flavor on the Maryland program. So if year one we're not very good and we're not what we were, I'm okay with that, to be completely honest. But after year one, to me, the expectation every single year and what I expect from Coach Buzz Williams is probably going to be the tournament. And year two, we're looking at you probably want to be you just want to make it. I think year one, you kind of get that. You get that leeway where it's like whatever happens, we're going to make the excuse. We're going to say it's your first year. We're going to give you the benefit of the doubt in most situations. We're going to say it's okay. Whatever the deal is, we're probably going to support where you're at. Year two, it's going to be, okay, this team's got to make we want this team to make a tournament. We don't got to be a 1 seed or 2 or even a 3 or 4, but we want to sit right around maybe a 7, maybe an 8, maybe a 6. We want to be in the tournament. We want to be competitive all year. We want to be competitive in the Big Ten. And then after year 2, maybe year 3 of that, after that, I want us to start really pushing ourselves to be one of the better teams in the Big Ten. And I think that's what Maryland program wants, and to be a top 4, 5, 6 seed in the tournament year in and year out. And I don't know if that's a little bit unreasonable, but people forget this is one of the best brands. This is one of the best kind of traditions in college basketball. Maryland basketball has a really good history of winning basketball. We have a national championship. We've done a lot of good things, and it's a big-time brand. That's part of the reason Coach Williams left for Texas A&M. Texas A&M, they have a pretty good team right now. They've been pretty good the last couple of years. I think, what is it? He's made 3 straight tournaments. He didn't just leave Texas A&M just because to go to another program that's the same as Texas A&M. He went to a program that is a basketball school, a school that cares about basketball a ton. Look at what Texas A&M cares about. People over there care about football. They care about football. Football is everything, and I don't blame them. Football is where a lot of the money's at. Football is where a lot of things happen. But to me, basketball is Maryland is a basketball school, and it makes sense for him to come over here. And I think that's kind of my goal. I think after year 1, it's like whatever happens, happens. You got to give him time. That's just how it is. Year 1's never as good as you want it to be. If he makes the tournament, I think that's exceeding expectations a little bit. If he sneaks into the tournament, I still think that's in a good – if anything that ends in March Madness next year, I think is a good spot for Maryland basketball. I really believe that. I think they did a good job. I think that in terms of after year 1 – after year 1 heading into year 2, you want to start making the tournament. You want to be like a good solid tournament team. Then year 3, same type of thing. And then after that, I think he signed a 6-year contract. So I'm looking at his contract from year 3 to 6. That's where we want to start competing. It's not going to be every year to be a national champion type of team, but to be a team that's a top 5 or 6, top 4-ish seed in the tournament, similar to how we were this year. This is kind of what I would want consistently from Buzz Williams, is to be a team that is top 4 or 5 in the Big Ten, kind of like Purdue is at this point. Purdue, year in and year out, feels like they're going to be pretty good. They might not win the national championship. They might not make a final 2 or whatever the case is. They might not make a national championship game, but that Purdue team feels pretty good year in and year out at this point. We can usually count them in to be able to be a tournament team, to be a pretty high seed, to be a top 25 team throughout the year. And that's kind of that'll be kind of my expectation for Coach Buzz Williams from year 3 to 6. Again, year 1, it can kind of go bad. It can not look great. And then year 2, I think you got to start looking a lot better. You get some of your guys that you want. You bring in a recruiting class. You get a lot of money and stuff for the portal. Hopefully Maryland's NIL stuff is fixed. And that's what a lot of it's going to come down to be completely honest. A lot of it today is just how much you pay the player. How much you're going to play the players is a big part of today's kind of thing. So if Maryland can get the AD situation right, if they can get the payment right, the NIL stuff right, then they can be in a really good spot to be able to do a lot of different things. So I do think that that's something else that could really help Coach Buzz Williams. And I'm hoping that the expectation is for Maryland to really dig into that and really make that a big part of what the Terps do is the NIL stuff. But to me, that's kind of the goals for Coach Buzz Williams. I do think as a Maryland program, our goal just can't be just make the tournament. That's kind of the expectation for me after year 2 or 1 or 2. The expectation is going to be make the tournament. If we're not, then we're doing something wrong. I think that's kind of where I see it. I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know. And that's what he's done the last 3 years at Texas A&M. Like that's kind of been the expectation of Texas A&M the last 3 years. And so it kind of matches up. But to me, it can't be like, oh, we can't make it out of the round of 32 though. It's got to be a little something more than that, especially after year 2 and 3, like year 4, 5, 6. You really want to start doing a little something else. Malachi Palmer, Christian Jeffrey, the Terps' young kind of core. Who's going to be there? Who's going to stay? What's the deal with them? We'll talk about that next. The NCAA tournament is here, and the FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on college hoops action all summer long. So let's talk about some of the Terps and what's the deal with some of these guys. I want to start with Malachi Palmer. So Malachi Palmer was a 3-4-ish type of recruit last year. I do think he has the potential to be a good player. I don't think he's going to be anything crazy, but who knows over the next couple of years. I wouldn't even have minded if Kevin Willard redshirted Palmer. He didn't really play ever like super meaningful minutes. I know early season he was able to get into the rotation a bit, able to do some things. And I was kind of surprised that we ended up not really going to him, not really playing him, especially with the struggle of the bench. I didn't mind trying him out a little bit. And I did think Malachi Palmer had some good moments when he played. He didn't play a ton, so there obviously wasn't a ton of them, but I did like him in some spots. In my opinion, basically on it is he did enter the portal, but there was a report I saw that a family member said that he, depending on what coach got hired, he could end up staying at Maryland. There was a high chance of him staying at Maryland. So I do think at the end of the day, for him, it was more about the school, it was more about Maryland instead of, Kevin Willard. Obviously, Kevin Willard is probably part of his decision and part of some of that situation, but obviously it was less of that. And so to me, Malachi Palmer, it sounds like, is in the portal right now. We know he's in the portal right now, but it does sound like he could end up coming back. And that could be somebody that could help us down the road. It might not even be this year. It might not be next year, but he could be really good, I think, by his junior, senior year. He could really end up having an impact on the Maryland program. And I do think he could make a sophomore jump, but it might be more of a junior, senior thing for him. But those are the types of guys that are really good in college basketball. The guys that are one and done, yeah, those guys are flashy. Those guys are going to get the media. Those guys are going to get the headlines. The guys that make up your program, they're guys that stay a while. Maybe didn't play a ton freshman year. Maybe didn't play a ton of minutes sophomore year. But junior year, they're strong. They're athletic as they're going to be. They're as skilled as they're ever going to be. And they're in their prime as basketball players. And they're going to end up giving you really good minutes as whatever they do because they know what they're doing. They're experienced. They've been in the college weight room. You don't have to teach them a bunch of things. And so I do think part of that is interesting with Palmer, and that's definitely something that could end up happening with him. And I think down the road he could really end up helping. And it could be next year depending on what this roster looks like. But we're also not sure. We might just not get him back. He might decide I'm not in love with Coach Williams. I don't know exactly. So we'll see. There should be more coming out about that soon. There should be more news about that soon. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But I do think Malachi Palmer is going to end up entering the portal. Let's hope Rodney Rice ends up doing that as well with Palmer. We'll see exactly. We know Rice is still probably going to transfer. Villanova is probably going to get him. But we'll see exactly. And then that kind of leads me to Christian Jeffrey, 4-star recruit, ended up really making a jump in the rankings, really end up having a really good kind of past year or so to really make a jump and to really solidify himself as one of the better guards in that 2025 class. And obviously he was committed to Maryland under Kevin Willard, and now it's a two-man clash between Villanova and Maryland. And I don't know how this is going to go. I would guess he probably leans towards Villanova. It sounds like a lot of what he chose was because of Willard and what he did, which makes sense. This is what happens. But Maryland is still in discussion, and he said, and that's like made it pretty clear that it's those two schools. So we'll see how that ends up going down, and we'll see what Coach Williams can do. Can you get a guy like Jeffrey? How fast can you build a relationship with Coach Williams? Because that's something that's not easy to do. And that we're going to see a lot about his recruiting and how he's able to keep guys, depending on what Christian Jeffrey does, what Rodney Rice does. But to have a top 100 player, we would definitely want that. At the guard spot, that's definitely something that would really be beneficial for the Terps, really something that could help Maryland overall. So that's something else that could really help the Terps right now. So I do think that that's big, but we'll see exactly how that goes. So I'm excited to see exactly what happens. That's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football, basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.